Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you on CGTN. China sits at the crossroads, having developed exponentially. After 40 years of opening up, China must now reconcile that economic development came with a cost. China's next stage of development can be fueled by green technology. With the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord, China, though, has the opportunity to become a leader and a partner in sustainable economic development. Can the country act as a role model for emerging nations who want to leapfrog the worst excesses of industrialization? Let's find out. For more, join us in our Beijing studio, Ma Jun, who is the director of the Institute for Public and Environmental Affairs and also founder of the Blue Map app in China. Also joining us in Beijing, Zhang Jianyu, Chief Representative of Environmental Defense Fund China Program. Gentlemen, welcome to our program. Long time no see, but I'm looking forward to this discussion. Earlier you see in our program, banning plastic bags by young people in Indonesia, and that campaign spread around the world. Talking about the transition of economy and creating job opportunities for small enterprises in Canada as a result of dealing with waste and plastics. Now, what is China doing here, Mr. Ma?
I think China has been working on the garbage issue at this moment. I think plastic is an important part of that. We have just seen Shanghai, taking the lead to initiate the first mandatory garbage sorting program.
Yes. And created quite a stir on social media.
All kind of social media craze. But I think this is the first serious action taken in China to try to really initiate the garbage sorting, which has been initiated first 20 years ago, but without much progress at all. This time it's getting quite serious.
Mr. Zhang, though, is China and the rest of the world taking different ways? I mean, if you look at banning plastic bags in African countries, Indonesian girl doing their campaign now to use plastic bags, others talking about single use already banned by year 2021 in Canada, for example. China did not mention too much in the so-called plastic bag issue, but rather looking at the bigger issue of how to treat with waste. Are these two different approaches?
Well, waste. I think China, I don't see that much difference in terms of the approaches different countries has been taking. If you recall, actually, China launched this campaign banning plastic bag almost 10 years ago by the NDRC. I mean, successful or not, we can judge. But I think now
that's important. Was successful or not?
Well, to a certain degree, is successful, because if you go to any of the grocery stores, I think these days you actually need to pay if you want to get a bag. I think the economy really works there, because if you want to pay, then lots of people start to use reuse bags rather than to buy those plastic bags on site.
Right.
But I think the most recent news is quite encouraging, because I think finally we're taking a systematic approach to the waste issues. I think really starting from, there's a really important revision of our solid waste law right now is at the NPC, National People's Congress, right now.
But when is it likely to come out, and how is it related to the recent issue going on in Shanghai about how to deal with the waste from the common people's perspective?
Well, I think it's going through the revision right now. I think we're really expecting that very soon. Minister Li Ganjie from the Ministry of Ecology and Environment made a personal testimony there and pledged for the passing of the law to the legislators. And I think Shanghai is just really setting up a very good precedent in terms of what they're doing.
Right.
And I think every province in China are looking to Shanghai to see and hope they could be successful.
But think about that, Mr. Ma. It's not just advocacy, because what Shanghai is doing is certainly a great advocacy, a great case study, but also education for the public. For example, what kind of waste to be sorted out, in what category, what kind of waste belongs to what category, and how would from children till the senior age would all understand these concepts and do it rightly. Meanwhile, when the garbage companies collect them together, there's also going to be sorted out, not the common people making the effort, and eventually it didn't work. So, Mr. Ma, your take. Advocacy vis-a-vis education.
Yeah, I think it's, I'm so happy to see this started from Shanghai, because Shanghai people have been known to be very meticulous, meticulous and very careful in their living. So when it got started there, they have been able to differentiate all these 30, 40 different kinds of all kind of waste and then categorize them.
Do you have prejudice against the people in Shanghai or bias?
No, this is I give credit for them to do this.
Exactly.
But in the meantime, you mentioned a very important point. I think the failure for the past 20 years in our garbage sorting program is that you educate people, but in the meantime, the collection, the transportation and disposal and recycling, all these are not following this. People see some different, some sorted out, but then you dump this all together. This is very, very become a very big upset. But this time in Shanghai, I think they have made a difference. They have the other holistic approach. So the government decided to spend the real political capital on this.
A lot of political capital.
That's right.
You can see the debates on the internet. Mr. Zhang, what about that? Advocacy vis-a-vis education and the building of the systematic or holistic approach, as Mr. Ma just mentioned. Is it going to be short-term, or is it likely to be a long-time task? Even if it is the latter, it takes much more than what's just going on right now on social media debate.
Well, I think China shortens everything. Arguably China has shortened the industrialization process from other countries have to do with about 100 years. China has shortened that into 30, 40 years. And I believe we're going to have the same success in garbage sorting. I think
if we really try.
Right. The issue is, this, again, I think I emphasize the systematic approach is really important, because if you think about the other issues we have been dealing with, air and water, mostly we use an iron hand coming from a top-down approach. But this garbage issue, you have to deal with the people, because people plays a really important role in this whole chain of garbage production, garbage use, garbage recycling, and garbage incineration and disposal. And I think it's the people's element that we really start to deal with. That actually represents really, I think, a revolutionary approach. The government is dealing with overall environmental issues.
The bottom-up approach rather than the top-down approach.
Right.
And you see that also being successful all over the world. We mentioned earlier in our case study discussion about the bad bioplastic bags in Indonesia and also in Canada. But the question really is, for China, it's a huge country, Mr. Zhang, one has to admit. 1.4 billion people. This bottom-up approach, yes, could be successful in certain cities, such as the favorite city of Mr. Ma, Shanghai. But will that be also successful in other parts of China where the economies do not necessarily as developed as that in Shanghai?
Well, that's why I mentioned I think this law is really important. I think law establish a common level playing field for everyone in this country you have to deal with. And Shanghai is just really making the first move. If they are successful, then that experience can be replicated throughout the country.
But we cannot just bury ourselves in the fascination about this garbage sort out, and therefore we're getting there, treating our environment beautifully. Because as far as I understand, Mr. Ma, we are having a daunting task. You are doing this, what you call the blue sky map, in a way. You're trying to sort out the companies that have been polluting air, water in this country and make sure their names are being exposed to the general public and the consumers. You got it over there. But the recent number, as far as I know, is not that optimistic.
That's right. Last week we just marked out our 1 million, milestone of the number of violators in our blue map database.
That is not a milestone. I'm afraid it's quite a tragedy, Mr.
But it shows
but I know you're an optimistic person.
That's the level of showing the level of enforcement and disclosure has been really expanded. And then, through this market approach, we're working with global and local brands, including Apple, Huawei, and others, to green their supply chain, and working with financial institutions to drive green finance. And together, every week now, they can motivate more than 100 factories to take corrective actions and openly address their violations. But now, I think it's very important to also work on the green consumption part. I think we can have green production, we can have green finance, green supply chain, which all pressure for green finance. But in the meantime, the power of the people is also very important. Because thinking about China as a growing middle class, their lifestyle is actually generating so much demand and creating so much waste. Now everyone order their food, order everything online. And just think about how much waste this is going to generate. But if they turn themselves into active citizens, they can drive positive change.
Mr. Zhang, you've been also working on the Green Belt and Road Initiative. That's also how China should and will interact with the rest of the world to bring in this green idea, as well as the issue related to climate change, environmental protection, to the countries with which China is working together with.
Yeah, I think, again, I think China is fast pacing with everything, also on the environmental movement. And I think lots of countries, particularly on the Belt and Road, are now looking for China experience, how China has been dealing with the issues. So it's no longer just the industrialization's experience. They think the Chinese experience could be more applicable to their very unique country situation. So I think China really want to not only export the technologies, expertise, but also they want to export the environmental idea, the green idea, throughout the Belt and Road.
Of course, China had lessons before when it comes to environmental issues. It's time to learn the lessons, and it's also time to share about the best practices when they can.
Yeah, quite some of them are coming to us because they're very interested in China's monitoring technology and enforcement as new skills. So like Vietnam, like India, our colleagues have been invited to share some practice, not just lessons, but now also best practice.
Fascinating insights, I have to say. We'll have more opportunities in the near future to explore many of the case studies you talked about. Certainly very important to dig deeper into every of these issues we just mentioned. Thank you so much, Zhang Zhenyu and Ma Jun. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for more insights across China and around the world.